morning everyone. We're from the group 3 and we will tackle about the psychologist perspective on the self. Psychology of the self. The psychology of the self is the study of cognitive or affective representation of one's identity. In modern psychology, the earliest formulation of the self derived from the distinction between the self as I, the subjective knower, and the self as me, the object that is known. What is cognitive means? Cognitive is a person's ability to process a thought, an effective representation of one's identity. It is subject of experience. So what is the self as I? It is the own thought of oneself, while the me self, it is the person's behavior or it is one's personality. Here are some psychologists and their theory about the self. First is William James. He is a father of American psychology and also an American philosopher, historian, and psychologist and the first educator to offer a psychology course in the United States. James' theory of the self divided a person's mental picture of self into two categories, the I and the me. The I refers to the self that knows who he or she is. This is the thinking, the acting, the feeling self, or everything what's in the person's mind is the I self. While the me self refers to the person's personal experience and it divided into subcategories, the material self, the social self, and the spiritual self. First is the material self. Material self is the body itself or the things that belong to that person is a material self. While the social self, it is how you act in a social situation. For example, when you're talking to your boss, parents, or teachers, of course, you will talk to them in a respectable way. And lastly is the spiritual self. It is refers of who you are. Or for example, your parents kay ginapadako ka as a good person. And that personality of yours kay madala na nimo siya inagdako nimo and it doesn't change, and that's what spiritual self is. Next is George Herbert Mead, an American philosopher prominent in both social psychology and the development of pragmatism. George Herbert Mead suggested that the self develops through a three-stage role-taking process. These stages include the preparatory stage, play stage, and the game stage.
First is the preparatory stage. In this stage, children mimic those what they hear or see, and this is why parents of young children typically do not want you to use foul language around them. And of course, as an adults, we need to be careful sa ating pangsulti, especially if na yung mga bata na nagpalibot nato. And next is the play stage, where children about 2 to 6 years old start to take and act out rules during the play, or they are the rule maker of the game because it is much easier to ask adults to adopt their own role. For example, if nagdula silang balay-balay, ng ana ang usang ako ang mama, tapos ang usang mo siya, ako ang papa niya, tapos yun sila na, ikaw ang lola, so dapat ka na nga rules, imo na siyang sundon. And then the last is the game stage, which is from about age 7 onwards. In this stage, they already understand the rule and regulations of the adults. For example, if muan na ilang parents na, dili ka pwede magkalat-kalat kay mahugaw atong balay. So, that simple rules kay masunod na nila.
Ramson Roger was an American psychologist and among the founders of the humanistic approach in psychology, believe in the inherent goodness of people.
Humanistic approach, it is a perspective that emphasizes looking at the whole individual and stresses concepts such as free will, self-efficacy, and self-actualization.
Now, we look into an important concept, Rogers, which is called self-concept. Now, of human being, self-concept is a set of perception and beliefs about his or her own self. So this is initially or analysis of what we think we consist of self-concept. It is influenced by our childhood and also the way the society around us perceive us. It is further broken down into three components: self-worth or esteem, self-image, and the ideal self. Now, self-worth or esteem direct towards what we think we are worthy of as a people and what we deserve in life. A factor of a higher influence here is the treatment one is received as a child from his or her parent. Now, self-image direct towards how we look at ourselves as a human beings, as a part of society. Now, this is include if we think of ourselves as a good or bad people, as a beautiful or ugly people, kind or selfish, healthy or unhealthy, successful or unsuccessful, etc. So it like looking into a mirror, how do you actually see yourself? Do you actually deem yourself as a worth? Do you actually see yourself as a good or bad people? A complete analysis of your own image in your own mind. Okay, that is what self-image is, an extremely important concept. And idea self now direct towards the person that we would like to be in our mind. Now this is the idea state we have in our mind for ourselves. Now this consists of all our goals and ambitions, and since goals can actually change over time and over the course of our life, as we age, our ideal self also undergoes changes. Now, according to Rogers, if and when human beings move closer to their ideal self, they actually begin to self-actualize.
On the next slide, we have Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychologist who was the first to make a systematic study of the acquisition of understanding in children. According to Piaget, children was born with very basic mental structure, genetically invented and evolved on which all subsequent learning and knowledge are based. Piaget did not claim that a particular stage has reached at a certain age, although description of the stages often include an indication of the age at which the average child would be at a certain stage. First on Piaget's cognitive development stages is sensory motor, from birth to 2 years old. During this stage, infant lives in the present. It does not have a mental picture of the world stored in its memory. Therefore, it does not have a sense of object permanence. If it cannot see something, then it does not exist. This is why you can hide a toy from an infant while it watches, but it will not search for the object once it has gone out of sight. Next stage, the pre-operational stage, 2 years old to 7 years old. During this stage, the child develops the ability to think using symbols and signs. Symbols represent something or someone else. For example, a doll may symbolize a baby, child, or an adult. Also, this stage, children believe that their way of thinking is the only way to think. Third on Piaget's cognitive development stages, the concrete operational stage, from 7 to 11 years old. During this stage, children begin to think logically about concrete events. Children begin to understand the concept of conservation, understanding that although things may change in appearance, certain properties remain the same. Children in this stage can mentally reverse things. They become less egocentric and begin to think about how other people might think and feel. Piaget's last cognitive development stage is formal operational stage, from adolescence to adulthood. This stage involves an increase in logic, the ability to understand deductive reasoning, and an understanding of abstract ideas. At this point, people become capable of seeing multiple potential solutions to problems and think more scientifically about the world around them. The ability to think about abstract ideas and situations is the key hallmark of the formal operational stage of cognitive development. The ability to systematically plan for the future and reason about hypothetical situations are also critical abilities that emerge during this stage. The next we're about to discuss is the three basic components of Piaget's cognitive theory. First, assimilation. Assimilation is a cognitive process of fitting new information into existing cognitive schema, perception and understanding. Overall beliefs and understanding of the world do not change as a result of new information. So, what is a schema? Ang schema is muna siya ang mga butang nga naanda nimo. The next is accommodation, a cognitive process of revising existing schema, perception, and understanding so that new information can be incorporated. This happens when an existing schema does not work and needs to be changed to deal with a new object or situation. Last is equilibration. Equilibration is a concept developed by Piaget that describes the cognitive balance of new information with old knowledge. This is a major component of Piaget's theory of childhood cognitive development.
Gordon Willard Alport was an American psychologist who focused on the study of personality. He is also known for being one of the founders of personality psychology and is the father of personality theories. What is the Gordon Alport theory and the Alport theory of personality? Gordon Alport, born in 1897, was a pioneer American psychologist who created the Gordon Alport personality theory. Alport believed that every consistent characteristic contributing to a person's personality fell into one of these three categories. His theory focused on how each person was different from the next due to their salient personality components. A person's personality traits will make up their motivation and actions. Alport would later refer these personality traits as personality disposition. He began developing this theory by going through a dictionary and noting every term he found that described a personality trait. After compiling a list of 4,504 different traits, he organized them into three different categories, including cardinal traits, central traits, and secondary traits. But first, let's talk about what are traits. Traits are relatively permanent entities in the individual. They are reflected in the individual's many behaviors in different situations. The trait approach focuses on the specific psychological attributes along which individuals tend to differ in consistent and stable ways. According to Alport, traits constitute the basic unit of individual's personality. He defined traits as the predisposition to respond and react in the same or similar manner to stimuli the environment. Cardinal traits. Cardinal traits are those that dominate an individual's personality to the point that the individual becomes known for them. Cardinal traits are the most dominant personality traits but also the rarest. Such traits are so intrinsically tied to an individual's personality that the person becomes almost synonym with those qualities. Central traits. Alport believed that central traits are much more common than cardinal traits and serve as the basic building blocks of most people's personality. If you think of the major terms you might use to describe your overall character, such as honest, friendly, generous, or anxious, those are probably your central traits. Alport suggested that the most people have about 5 to 10 central traits. Secondary traits. Secondary traits tend to present themselves in certain situations. For example, you might normally be a pretty easygoing person, but you might become short-tempered when under a lot of pressure. Or a normally calm person might become very anxious when faced with speaking in public.
Albert Bandura was an influential social cognitive psychologist who is perhaps best known for his social learning theory, the concept of self-efficacy, and his famous Bubudal experiments. Bandura was a well-known social cognitive psychologist. According to him, self is proactive and agentic. Bandura believes that we can learn by being observant. Makat-on daw ta bisag bantay ratas behavior sa uban or the way how things work. When you believe in yourself, everything is possible. Idea ng Bandura sa theory niya nga, the 4 steps of observational learning and modeling process. First, we have attention. Second, retention. Third one, motor reproduction. And last, the motivation. So, first, attention. Diba, if ganhan ka, katunon ang usa ka butang, tagaan man gid na tog atensyon. So, if ma-distract ka, it causes negative impact yun on your observational learning. Next, retention. So, what is retention man? Anong appeal man ni siya sa 4 step of observational learning ni Bandura? So, retention di ay kay ang ability to store information. Mo ni ang importante sa kaning process niya. Kay di ba? Una, mag-pay attention ka. Dayon, imo na siyang store sa imong namduman unsay imong gi hatagag atensyon. So, ang sunod di ay kay ang pag-perform. Diba, gapay attention ka tapos you retain the information. Imong gihinumduman this time, imo nang i-perform. And that's what we call motor reproduction. To complete the 4 steps of Bandura's theory, we have motivation. In order for observational learning to be successful, you have to be motivated to imitate the behavior that has been modeled. So, kailangan daw natay motivation nga buhaton, sunon or imitate. Like example, di ba? Ginahan ta ma-successful kay punta lang parihan ni kuan, successful na siya. In order for that nga ato nang mabuhat, dapat natay motivation nga kaya ako ning buhaton inana. So, moto ang 4 steps observational learning and modeling process. Diba, according to Bandura, self is proactive and agentic. We have free will. We can react. We can make changes in our action. We can make things happen. To support his claim, he proposed 4 agentic perspective. First, intentionally. It enables us to behave with purpose. Mubuhatag butanga na ay purpose. Like example, gatoon ka. Nganong gatoon man ka, diba? Kay na quiz. Diba na purpose? So, everything we do has a purpose. Second one is forethought. So, it allows us to anticipate outcomes. So, kita daw, we anticipate outcomes. For example, gatoon ka. So, natural, imo na nang ginhuna nga dako kog score. Kay di ba? Outcomes na sa imong pagtuon. So, that explain forethought sa ikaduha nga agentic perspectives ni Bandura. The third one is self-reactiveness. We can be motivated to regulate our actions. So, example is, kanagaling the way how we look ourselves sa mirror. Makabantay ta, nitambok ta, ni daota. So, example, ni daota, stressed, or wala na nagkaon saktong oras. So, we regulate our actions nga, mukaon ako saktong oras. The last one is self-reflectiveness. We can reflect our thoughts and behaviors and make need modifications. So, example ana is, PE ninyo, sobraan nakakiat kay free time. So, murag, di ba dagko naman ta? So, kay ba na ta mo reflect sa tong actions, behaviors. So, nakunahuna man tangin ana. So, next time nga, PE ninyo, tas wala mo'y klase, dira na ang modifications mo play siyang role. Like, makunahuna na ka nga, ay, pag last, kiatry ko. So, karon magpuyo ra ko, nana. So, that is self-reflectiveness.
Erik Erikson. Erikson was a German-American developmental psychologist and psychoanalyst known for his theory of psychological development of human beings. Erikson's theory of development includes various psychosocial crises where each conflict builds off of the previous stages. Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Erikson's theory suggests that your ego identity develops throughout your entire life during 8 specific stages. Erikson maintained that personality develops in a predetermined order through 8 stages of psychosocial development, from infancy to adulthood. During each stage, the person experiences a psychosocial crisis which could have a positive or negative outcome for personality development. And these stages are infancy, early childhood, play age, preschool, school age, adolescence, early adulthood, middle adulthood, and late adulthood.
Susan Harter's perspective on the self. Susan Harter served as a professor of psychology and head of the developmental psychology at the University of Denver. According to Harter, self-concept is a broad construct that involves individuals' perceptions of their abilities and includes the affective component of self-esteem in terms of beliefs and emotions about themselves. There are 4 self-development concepts according to Harter. First is the early childhood. The child describes himself in terms of concrete, observable characteristics, material possessions, behaviors, and preferences. Early childhood refers to the period between birth and 5 years. Quality nurturing care during this period is vital for children's physical, cognitive, linguistic, and social emotional development. Second is middle or late childhood. The self is described by the use of trait-like constructs. Middle or late childhood spans the ages between early childhood and adolescence, approximately ages 6 to 11 years. Children gain greater control over the movement of their bodies, mastering many gross and fine motor skills that eluded the younger child. Third is the adolescence. Emergence of a more abstract self-definitions such as inner thoughts, emotions, attitudes, and motives. Adolescence is the period of transition between childhood and adulthood. Children who are entering adolescence are going through many changes. Adolescence begins at puberty, which now occurs earlier on average than in the past. Last is the emerging adults, characterized by having a vision of a possible self. Emerging adults refers to a phase of the lifespan between late adolescence and early adulthood. It is a distinct period between 18 and 29 years of age where young adults become more independent and explore various life possibilities.
Thank you for watching.